Hello there, listeners of the Bylines Network podcast, coming to you live from Wallace and Gromit's basement. I'm Julian in Bristol.
I'm Chris in London.
And I'm Louise in Yorkshire.
Now, listeners, as I hinted at from the end of the last episode, we are celebrating a very special birthday on 15th, which is hopefully when this episode's going to go out. Yorkshire Bylines, and by extension, the Bylines Network, is 5!
Yay!
Yay! So we thought, why not get the editor-in-chief, or one of the editors-in-chief of Yorkshire Bylines who started the whole thing, and just talk about the last 5 years and basically celebrate the birth of this magnificent organisation. So, Louise, thank you very much for joining us.
You're very welcome. It's lovely to be with you.
Now, speaking as an outsider who then later joined the network, I noticed Yorkshire Bylines started to become a thing in 2019. Very different time. Donald Trump was president. There was a global disease that was entering the news, and the government was announcing benefit cuts. So, very, very different times.
I know times have changed.
But I noticed that Yorkshire Bylines was kind of like born out of like all those old place for Europe. So like Hertfordshire for Europe, Yorkshire for Europe. What did the process look from the other side? What inspired you to start it, and how did it come about?
So, yeah, many of us had been part of pro-EU movement in 2018, 2019. So we'd campaigned to get a second vote on Brexit deal. So we could at least look at what it might involve and decide whether that's what we as a country had voted for or not. And we campaigned hard for that and didn't succeed. And on the back of the 2019 general election, which also didn't go the way some of us might have wanted, but that didn't mean it was very political in what we started. There were quite a few people that didn't necessarily want a Boris Johnson government. So there was a little bit of gathering ourselves after that to try and work out, where we were going. And I looked at starting an organisation called Democracy in Action because I wanted to work with education and democracy and just do a little bit more to like citizens' assemblies and bringing into schools, working in schools. So really a project that was going to be looking at how we engage people more in democracy involves in running the country. But I hadn't actually got very far with that when Mike Galsworthy made contact I think it was back end of January or February 2020, and said, did I want to, or was I interested in helping start something in Yorkshire, very similar to what they were doing at Byline Times, but more of a citizen journalism volunteer thing. So that's kind of what led up to it and what it looked like. And I said, sure, I can give it a couple of weeks, maybe a month, and we'll see how it goes. And I reached out to lots of the people I knew in Yorkshire. I'm not originally from Yorkshire, you can probably tell, but I've been here for more than half my life. And you get to know a lot of people through your work and through campaigning and politics and stuff. And just reached out to lots of people to see who might be interested in writing articles about what they know or about what matters to them. And then what I said then was that we would bring a team of us together and then edit what they do so that they can write what they want. And it doesn't matter if they've never written before or if they just don't even know what they want to say. Just get it all down there. We will work as editors, because I was a professional editor at the time. Still am. We will work with them and make what they write something, really powerful that we can then publish. And we will put that together online. And that became, on the 15th of April, Yorkshire Bylines.
And here we are, obviously 5 years later, and I mean, one thing I was going to ask you, did you sort of sense at the time that Yorkshire Bylines would grow to be what it is now, when you got that call from Mike 5 years ago?
No, I genuinely said to him, I can give it like a month to do this. I like a challenge. It felt like something I could do, and we didn't. I mean, there was the early news reports at that time that what then became the pandemic, that things had been happening, some people had died. What was it? It was really early on at that stage. And by the time we launched, we were already in lockdown. So in that period between, early news reports, what's happening, is it going to be, affecting more than one country? And then suddenly on the 23rd of March, obviously we went into lockdown. Yorkshire Bylines just took off from there. When you combine the fact that you had a natural demographic who were quite unhappy with the way politically we were going at that point, but coming from so many different backgrounds that really knew their stuff. So whether it's, engineers or teachers or healthcare professionals, or just a lot of people that really knew what they were talking about, and a lot of people who were very angry at that point, and a lot of people sat at home with a computer who couldn't go outside. We hadn't planned it that way, obviously, but it was the perfect kind of recipe at that point for bringing together people who had something important to say with people who wanted to listen, who were feeling a little bit sort of disempowered in many different ways. And you brought that together and it just exploded. Plus, what was the initial sort of pro-EU network, where we all had social media accounts and social media following. So we didn't have to start that off with, we're Yorkshire Bylines, please follow us. Well, we did. But what we had were people that already knew all of us. So we instantly got that following. And very quickly, we're having tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands in those early months of readers. It was quite incredible and very sobering. So no, we didn't know that would then spawn 10 other, which then became 10 in total, bylines in a very short space of time. It's incredible.
How did the other bylines come about then? Was it a case of like other pro-Europe groups coming forward and going, we like what you do, can we use the bylines name? Or was it just a case of you contacting them?
The first, really. But bear in mind, by this point, we were not, although it came from people who had been pro-EU and mostly still are, very quickly we're saying this is not about being a rejoin project or anything like that. We need it to be much bigger than this. This is about democracy. It's about giving people a voice. So I was reaching out to contacts from all sorts of, groups that I'd worked with and campaigns. But yes, within that, people saw immediately what had happened and were straight away saying, we want this, we want that. So Northeast Bylines, straight away, there was contact there. Let's get this started. So within, those first few weeks, we were obviously, running Yorkshire Bylines, and we were publishing sort of 3 to 5 articles a day. And at that point, I was one of the few sort of people editing it. So the amount of content coming through, and we were turning it out and suddenly becoming experts in WordPress and SEO and all these other things that we'd never heard of. And but then I was sort of sharing what I'd done and how I'd set up Yorkshire with the Northeast team. And before we knew it, Northeast was born and West Country Bylines was born, that later became West Country Voices. And we went in quick succession through about 5 or 6, I can't remember, bylines in that first sort of 6 months. And then we kind of paused and sort of took a breath. And at that point, then we were thinking we need to be coordinating this more, that you've got this incredible platform and we've got amazing, powerful, passionate volunteers running it. We all know that we really value truth seeking, factual accuracy, and we value high standard of written content. That's very important. And we'd always said to anyone that was volunteering to edit that within reason, we don't want to turn down an article. If the content itself is something we know our readers are going to hear, it's an important message. And we would say to people, look, if you want to write it, probably somebody wants to hear it. So that's a good starting place. But if you're not a writer or it's not particularly well written, don't let that stop you, because that's where we can help do that sort of the co-creational aspect of that, of taking product A with the, what we know in terms of what is good when it's written. And the trick within that is to always keep, as far as possible, the author's voice. So it's not your voice by the time it's been edited, it's the author's. So yeah, so in a very short space of time, we had a little mini network. And my role then was to sort of support the other editors in chief and the other teams with what I was already discovering. But bearing in mind, I was only a couple of months older than them, and the team at Yorkshire was still learning it. And so yeah, it was insane.
The other two that started in 2020, by the way, were West England Bylines and Sussex. So
see, now I feel bad for not instantly knowing. But I was wondering when East Midlands as well, because East Midlands started and then became Central.
Oh yeah, 25th of September 2020.
Yeah.
So egg on my face. They're going to really love
and mine.
me for
it's okay.
leaving
We
them
all have.
West England, Sussex are like very well represented here, with me contributing and Chris
Oh,
contributed. So
now I see the segue. Yes, very good. Yeah, no, we did we launched ever so quickly, and so you say Sussex, which is East Sussex and West Sussex, but Sussex is one of our tiny little bylines, but really packs a punch, and punches above its weight in terms of the reader numbers it gets for the articles. West England, a huge area they cover, absolutely incredible area they cover with that, and the really strong, powerful articles coming out, but such a different flavour you get in each of the bylines. And West Country Voices, as is now, still going strong down there in the West Country. Really impressive to see what everyone keeps producing. So yeah, and I think it wasn't that long after that Kent, that then became Kent and Surrey, was born. We say
yeah,
born, but launched.
5th
So
of
yeah,
January 21.
there you
Yes, I
go.
do have
Yeah.
all the birthdays noted down because I tried to write the Wikipedia article for the
Of course,
Bylines
yes.
Network.
I mean, it's incredible to see obviously the network where it is now, and that's only within 5 years. I mean, it is a phenomenal sort of rise and explosion. I mean, one thing I know that you specifically, I think, have been involved in sort of coaching young writers from universities as well. That's opened up opportunities for quite a lot of people, I understand, to go into journalism as a full-time career. Can you tell us a bit more about that and sort of any particular notable success stories from that as well? That'd be interesting.
Well, without checking with anyone first, I don't want to name anyone from that, but that again happened more by luck than intent, because as I say, I reached out to lots of people I knew. I had been part of running an election campaign for Majid, who became our Green MEP in Yorkshire. And as part of that campaign, we'd done what we termed or coined the Tour de Majid. We went round Yorkshire and met lots of the local Green Party and found out what the activists were doing, and just really did that. And within that, we went to Leeds, and we were interviewed by somebody who worked at the Griffin newspaper, which is the student newspaper there. So when I launched Yorkshire Bylines, he was one of the people I reached out to at the Griffin, and he said, yeah, I've got friends that also write. So straight away, we had student writers joining us, very, very early. That then morphed into what is now a student placement program. So we work with, ironically, not Leeds University, although I did speak to somebody recently, but we have Sheffield University and Leeds Trinity, Leeds Beckett. So we have, and that's just in Yorkshire. Obviously, across the other bylines, we're working with many other universities. And the students, again, when it was in lockdown, we had students coming to us who were supposed to be, one particular, who stayed with us for many years, was supposed to be she was doing a history and politics degree at Leeds University and was supposed to take a year out to go to Brussels, and that couldn't happen because of pandemic. And so she just said, look, I have time, I can help out, and became really deeply involved in the Bylines Network, and went on from there to a dream job working for a charity, and definitely was the one that said Yorkshire Bylines changed my life. So I always quote her, but I can't name her because I haven't checked. But yeah, we've had several people go on. One now works for a member of parliament. We've had people do student placements. One works for the Daily Mail, which is an interesting difference from Yorkshire Bylines. But we've had one that's a local democracy reporter in East Anglia. So yeah, what we say again to the students is as little or as much as you want, you write it, we'll work with you. The difference is we won't rewrite their work so much as we might somebody else's, because it really does have to be the students' work. We can't be publishing stuff online that's not 100% written by the students, but they get to see how an online citizen journalism platform works. Again, they get the understanding of SEO, what we're particularly looking for with an online article. So things like really hooking people in that first paragraph. That first paragraph needs to say what the article's about, because Google and other search engines look in that first paragraph. So don't be spending 3 paragraphs getting to the point of what you want to say. You've got to really hit it first. So, and we just absolutely love the students coming in. So we have some great students who, for example, have done either like history or politics or English as a first degree. So they understand telling a story, constructing beginning, middle, and end. Hook them on the first line, let it all come out logically, and then really finish with a killer kind of punchy. So many readers we know you have like what's called a bounce rate when they come in and check an article. And some people will have read an article in apparently like 12 seconds. And then what they've done is they've read the first line, they've maybe skipped to the last line, they know they agree and they may share it online, but they've not necessarily sat and read the whole thing. So some of the best sort of student journalists, I would say, started with another degree, which is more sort of narrative style, where you write that long form storytelling.
There has recently been some changes in terms of social media moguls.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously, with like local democracy, or indeed any kind of like journalistic organization, sharing on social media is very important. And we all very recently made the jump from Twitter to Blue Sky. Was there a bit of a squeaky bum time, shall we say? Wondering if like jumping over to a new platform would like be a risk, and you'd lose like a bunch of followers.
Well, we didn't jump and close down. When we launched, Twitter was lovely. We all loved it. It was a great place to be. We all had strong Facebook pages that we had through different campaigns. So when new platforms launch, so when Threads launched, for example, we set up there and we did the whole "we're here" and yay. We did the same with Mastodon. It's all very exciting. But after the excitement of Threads and the excitement of Mastodon, when Blue Sky launched, it was like, really? Is it exciting? Do we want to do it? And bear in mind, we are run by volunteers. It's volunteers that are doing our social media. And if you're hand posting us, so when I publish an article, for example, in Yorkshire, and then putting out across 5 social media platforms, but you're having to cut and paste, but then slightly different one that, and a hashtag there, and a different @ and it is time consuming, and it would take a good 25 minutes per article each time to then go back and retweet it from personal accounts. And so when Blue Sky launched, I was the one that was very, very reluctant. Anna Damsky, who is the editor-in-chief at East Anglia Bylines, and by the way, we stopped halfway through, so all the other bylines we haven't mentioned are going to be feeling a little bit left out here. But no, the social media, I said, look, we can't expect volunteers to take on another social media platform. So what we did and what Anna did was set up the Bylines Network on Blue Sky and happily just shared articles there and built an incredible following in a short space of time. Then when Elon Musk crashed Twitter, and it became quite apparent very quickly that it was very, very toxic, and we thought it was actually just going to fully crash, but we then all launched. So that was only just before Christmas. So in the last 6 months, then we moved across. I was the one then with egg on my face going, we called that one wrong. We thought Mastodon was the big one, and lots of people still are there, and lots of people are still on Threads, but Blue Sky really took off in the way that Twitter used to be. And we've got now, Yorkshire has almost 30,000 followers on Blue Sky, which is what we've got on Twitter. But if we put a post out on Twitter, we might get 2 or 3 likes, maybe 1,000 in terms of number of people that have seen it. On Blue Sky, it'll be hundreds of likes and shares and comments, and the engagement. Most of our traffic now comes from Blue Sky. But we are still on X and Facebook and all the others as well. So if people are there, they'll read our articles.
That's just reminded me of kind of the rapid takeoff of the Bylines Network podcast Blue Sky account as well.
10, 11, 12,000 already on there.
So our journey, I was one of the first Bylines to join Blue Sky, and I did that very purposefully because we had the least followers on Twitter.
We had abandon Twitter. It's not worth it. Yeah, we
had 1,500 when we made the leap to Blue Sky. It's gone down now, by the way. We've lost about 300 followers. But we now have 11,300. I don't know the rest because the follower count shortens it. But yeah, we got nearly like 100 times.
But yeah, we're losing followers on X. So as our Blue Sky follower number is increasing, the X one is coming down every week. And so they will soon cross over the other way. But I love it. You kind of watch it and go, yeah, because of those 30,000, clearly 30,000 people on X are not engaging with us there. They're not reading our articles. I don't know how many of them are bots, or maybe they are genuine people, but Musk's algorithms have just stopped any of our content showing anymore. But yeah, and there are other social media platforms, keep popping up. And again, I'm still very reluctant to commit to joining it when our volunteers have enough on their plate. So we're hoping that Blue Sky is going to continue to expand.
That does quite neatly lead on to something. It was specifically sort of around the way that Twitter's changed and more generally social media. So, you mentioned it. The algorithm seems to play far much more of a part now in what we see and what people read and what you have access to on your feeds. And I mean, I certainly 5 years ago don't really remember having that same sort of personalized, very targeted stuff. And I mean, even on X, I mean, my account, I don't particularly follow anybody that's right wing, but for some reason, those are all the top
Yeah.
posts that I see. And I mean, do you? This is a bit of an existential question, probably a bit too early in the talk to ask it, but do you worry that and sort of that kind of behavior and that kind of tactic from tech companies poses threats to organizations like Bylines because it sort of pushes them out of a space. And like you say, you've got Blue Sky, which is fantastic, and obviously it was set up as an alternative. But how do we kind of fight back against the algorithm? What kind of things would you say?
Yeah, and it's tricky, isn't it? You can't necessarily fight back against an algorithm. And it was a debate we had in the Bylines Network is do we give way to, I don't know, let's go extreme, let's call them the fascists. If fascists take over X, do we give way to that and let them have that platform? We've decided to stay. We're still posting there. We're not engaging much there because we won't be bullied off a platform, but it does become just toxic and it feels horrible. You don't want to engage. If you put up a post, today is Autism Day, and we've put up a load of articles, we don't want to be engaging with trolls having a go at us because we're doing something like that. So it is tricky, and of course it poses a threat, but I think it also invigorates people. It gives them a purpose. When you're fighting something so obviously wrong, you want to make a difference, and so you have more people coming to us. We're now bringing in writers from across America and Canada because Blue Sky is strong there, and because there are things happening in America and Canada that are upsetting for people. So exactly the same kind of conditions as to when we launched the Bylines Network and Yorkshire Bylines 5 years ago, happening elsewhere. And while we can't have an America Bylines, certainly not this month, we can give a sort of place to people that want to have their voice heard and want to join us. So yes, it's bad, but we're not just sitting there and saying, oh, woe is me, this is really bad, look at the algorithms. It's motivating people to want to make a difference, and also to see that how long do you leave it without doing anything? If we just sort of sit there and now it's the algorithms and now they've taken over this, and if we leave it too late, we'll have found we've lost all control of things. So I think there are some amazing, powerful people, and I mean people power, all over the world, and definitely here in Yorkshire, who are making a difference. And it might not seem like a lot, you'll write an article, but Anthony Robinson, who coincidentally is one of our founders at Yorkshire Bylines, and it's his birthday on the 15th of April, which is complete coincidence. We didn't plan the launch that day. Don't think he told us for several years, by the way, that's my birthday. But he wrote an article the other day, Is Trump a Russian Agent? I think was the title of the article. And that's had over 70,000 reads on our site. And that kind of reach is powerful. That's just one person who has written something, and it's a good article, and it's answered the question. And the answer is no, we don't think he is. not an agent. He's not clever enough to be an agent. But that's the power that you can have just by writing, just by having that audience. So when we come together, we can make a difference.
That's the rallying cry we want to hear. I think I'm going to take.
I should have ended it. We can make a difference. Yeah.
So often we end up talking about topics that end up being quite depressing. It's like that's the attitude I want to take into every episode moving forward.
Well, you look at that. You remember back when we launched, and it was in the pandemic. It was pretty depressing. Lots of people talk about lockdown. It was pretty bad. For me, it was insanely busy. It was just constant, and it was exciting, and we're making a difference. So I remember lockdown as well. Though obviously it was quite nice weather as well, and there's no pollution and everyone enjoyed getting out, but actually we were busy making something which has now become this movement, which is just absolutely incredible. The second lockdown, I was less impressed with that was a little bit, I got a little bit sort of cabin fevery with that one. But yeah, we absolutely can and do make that difference, and we don't have to be depressed about everything. It is depressing, but you just have to sometimes turn it into something positive, and that rallying cry, because I don't know. Otherwise, why bother?
So what does the future hold? Because like the obvious one is you launched Kent and Surrey as Kent's, East Anglia, Northwest, Scotland and Cymru after you launched all of them, but you left out three very notable areas. Does the future plan on like having Bylines Hampshire, or are we going to have a Bylines America before we have Bylines Hampshire?
I think that for me, the Bylines Network is UK based, and we very much support our friends over in America and Canada. But that would be big. We've got little Sussex, and then we'll just take them the whole of America. And I see how quickly we brushed over the additional bylines. So at least we got a shout out for them. For me, what's missing is Ireland, Northern Ireland, Ireland. We could even have a whole Ireland bylines. That would be really exciting. We have quite a few writers and editors already from Northern Ireland that would very much like to do that. We just felt when that was a real push for that, we just felt that was just too much. We couldn't take on another, because while every bylines is run by volunteers, we all need to be coordinated. We have insurance and a bank account and all the kind of things that go with running a company. And sometimes teams are really strong and don't need much help, and sometimes they need just that little bit of assistance. And the more teams you have, the more the chance that you have. So we stopped short of that. I would love to see an all Ireland bylines. That would be very exciting. And yes, there are bits missing in the country, mostly around London, and that's not a coincidence. We felt that London was very well served by the papers. Byline Times is based there, albeit it's national. Hampshire, did you say Hampshire? That's kind of
Hampshire and the Isle of Wight. I only know that because I went to university in Southampton.
That's what it is. They are close to Sussex, and Sussex often takes articles from there, but very much likes the name Sussex Bylines and doesn't really want to do Hampshire, Sussex and the Isle of Wight yet. But yeah, we are aware of that. And if we can actually sort of become more resilient as a network and look at our sort of long-term sustainability, so that's the people that make this run, because we're volunteer powered and we're asking a lot of our volunteers. Some of our editors-in-chief, for example, will be sat in a volunteer role working over 8 hours a day at this. It's quite incredible what people do. They have such a sense of responsibility. We don't want to let the writers down. If writers have written something and other people have edited, or we've edited it, and it's topical, maybe it's about something that, Tesla takedown or something, we want to get that up. So you're sometimes working incredibly long hours, and for me that's the focus at the moment, is making sure the actual network as a whole is sustainable, so we can support our volunteers properly only then, and financially support ourselves, because it's not free running a network. Yes, we're volunteers, but we have all these overheads, and to actually have a tiny team in the middle supporting the volunteers again costs money. So for me, we become more financially sustainable, we become more resilient, and then very much we start turning our sights to Ireland and one day to London. Can we do Wisconsin before we do London? That might be that might be good. Londoners are going to be like, no. We'd love to do London. London and the boroughs we were looking at doing at one point as well. So definitely, we know we have people there. We have people that would want to run it, editors, writers. So London's definitely on our radar as well.
I'm just imagining a bunch of Irish people looking at all the English people starting to like run their own network in Ireland, just going, not again, lads.
Well, that's well, there you get political, don't you? And obviously we can't, it's kind of a wish list of what we could do if we can become more sustainable. But what we looked at with the nations, for example, we have this sort of semi-autonomy where each of the bylines, it runs themselves, they do their own thing. We try not to, from a network perspective, we try not to interfere in that unless there's something which might be a reputational risk, sort of financial or legal, or someone's published something that might be a little bit risque in terms of accusing an MP of doing something dodgy or something. So there's stuff that we have to do as a network, but we want that autonomous approach. And very much the case with the nations. Scotland runs Scotland, Cymru runs Cymru, and the same would be the case if we went into Northern Ireland, or indeed the whole of Ireland. So that would be something we would be working out as we went along, is that balance of this is your thing, but obviously it's still a company and there's a brand and there's a reputation. So we have to sort of support you in that.
Louise, thank you very much for joining us.
You're very welcome. It was a pleasure.
That was the Bylines Network podcast celebrating Yorkshire's 5th. It was hosted by me, Gillian Greenbank, and Christopher Davis, and Louise Houghton joined us very kindly to be interviewed. Please join us next time, listeners, for the next episode. See you then.